Bella has always been independent and rebellious since she was a child. Her family is in business. She was born into a prosperous time, so she grew up in a wealthy environment, lacking for nothing. However, her parents' relationship had broken down long ago. They each indulged in their own pleasures. With their busy business lives, they sent her abroad to study at a young age, entrusting her to a host family. Against this backdrop, Bella grew up freely and unrestrainedly. She had friends everywhere and was truly a party animal, enjoying a vibrant social life. It was 11 o'clock at night. The atmosphere in the nightclub was heating up. The colorful laser lights were dazzling, and the glasses of whiskey and shaking dice created a decadent and glamorous scene. Bella was dancing wildly with her friends. Her gorgeous skirt attracted the attention of the men around her, making them lose focus. She looked incredibly beautiful that night, with her wavy curls, fair skin, red lips, a form-fitting sequined miniskirt, ultra-thin red-soled shoes, and shiny jewelry. She was full of charm and radiating confidence. Many men came to strike up a conversation, but she casually tossed her hair over her shoulder, the ring on her ring finger glinting. She turned her head and ignored them all. She had no interest in casual flings or flirting. Before long, a man made his way through the crowded dance floor with some difficulty. He was a man in his late 20s, dressed in a suit and tie. He had a gentle and pleasant face, with a serious and upright demeanor. There was a blue lanyard around his neck, with a half-hidden ID badge peeking out from between his white shirt and suit collar. Maybe he forgot to take it off after work. His outfit and mannerisms made him look like a typical overworked office worker, the kind who didn't even have time for a social life. He seemed out of place in this trendy bar full of hipsters. The man pushed aside the men trying to chat up Bella, reached out to stop her, and half led, half pushed the slightly tipsy Bella out of the dance floor. The hand that encircled her had distinct knuckles, and it was wearing a ring matching hers. Downstairs of the bar, it was brightly lit. There were many young people standing around, chatting and smoking. They were distracted by the noise of the elevator and high heels at the entrance and the sweet smell of perfume wafting in the night breeze. Bella had a glamorous makeup look and a slender figure. She wore a man's suit over her sequin dress. Her steps were lazy, like a sleepy flower at night. As she was led away by the man, she lazily covered her mouth to yawn, then reached into the suit pocket and took out a peach-flavored fruit candy. The candy was provided in the company pantry for free. It was Bella's favorite flavor, and she often had one in her pocket. The man's ID badge was still prominently hanging on his chest. He took the fruit candy from her hand, opened the wrapper, and handed it back to her. Then, in full view of everyone, he helped Bella into the back seat of the car and walked around to the driver's seat to drive away. When the car reached the apartment and entered the underground parking lot, he turned off the engine and got out. Then he opened the rear door and the back seat. The woman was huddled up, tightly wrapped in his coat. Her high heels were kicked aside, and her long hair hung down over the edge of the seat. Her soft and glamorous face had a faint blush, and her eyes were closed quietly, with long, curled eyelashes that made people's hearts soften. The young man let out a soft sigh. It was hard to tell if he was exhaling the fatigue from working overtime today or thinking about how to carry her to the bedroom. He bent down, his shirt outlining his narrow waist. He leaned into the car to pick her up and softly called out to her, "Let's go home and sleep." As he leaned halfway in and his hand just touched her leg, his blue ID badge flashed conspicuously. Bella still had her eyes closed, but the corners of her lips secretly curled up. She reached out and precisely grabbed the lanyard of the ID badge. Her snow-white toes wrapped around his knee, and with a strong tug of her hands and feet, the man let out a muffled grunt of surprise and confusion. Caught off guard, he fell onto her. His tall and straight nose rubbed against her cheek, but he quickly reacted and propped his elbows on the car seat, creating a narrow space to avoid pressing on her. She opened her bright eyes, and his gentle face was reflected in her pupils. Her fingers twirled the ID badge, and her rose-colored lips approached his. Her voice was slightly tipsy, sweet, soft, and charming. "You forgot to take off your ID badge. Why did you get off work so early today?" When she said early, she really meant it. Bella loved to have fun and be in the spotlight. Tonight, they were celebrating a friend's birthday, and they had originally planned to party until they dropped. It wasn't even midnight yet. and he had come to take her away. That he looked a bit sheepish. Sorry. It was hard to tell if he was apologizing for working overtime all night for several days in a row or for interrupting her fun. What's the use of saying sorry? Bella wrinkled her nose and lifted her chin. Without hesitation, she opened her mouth and gently bit his tall and straight nose with her small, pointed teeth. The car compartment was narrow, and two adults in an awkward position were sitting in the back seat, their breaths intertwined, mixed with the strong smell of alcohol. The atmosphere was undeniably ambiguous. Bella lazily licked his lips and started to kiss him. It was a peach-flavored kiss. The candy was still on the tip of her tongue, and she passed it over. Sticky and sweet. She tugged harder on the ID badge, and the space between them became even smaller. Her long legs rubbed against his white shirt and charmingly hooked around his waist. Her actions were skillful, and the scene was so hot that it made one's face turn red and heart pound. The man was forced to accept her messy kiss and tried his best to straighten his back to resist. No, not here. There are security cameras in the garage. The property management might see us. The car door wasn't even closed yet. If someone drove by, it would be really embarrassing. After some tussling in the car, the man finally grabbed Bella's hand. His ears were red, and he stuffed the ID badge into his suit pants pocket. Then he half carried her out of the car and took her home. The elevator had a mirror. They entered the elevator like conjoined twins. Bella clung to his chest like an octopus. Giggling, he turned his head and saw that his cheeks and lips were stained with her light-colored lipstick. With his delicate and handsome face, it didn't look funny but rather carried a hint of alluring and sexy ambiguity. He didn't dare to look at the mirror, but somehow he glanced at it again. He wasn't the kind of guy who was breathtakingly handsome at first sight. Nor was he the cool and tough type. He just looked very pleasant. The kind of face that grew on you. The corners of his eyes drooped slightly, giving him an innocent look. His lips were beautifully shaped, not the cold-blooded, thin-lipped kind. His Cupid's bow was full, making him perfect for kissing. You're so handsome. Bella stood on tiptoe, trying to leave a lipstick mark on his chin. There are security cameras in the elevator too. The man shyly turned his head and hugged her into a blind spot of the camera. He glanced at himself in the mirror. His gentle face and proper white shirt didn't seem like his own. Then he looked down at Bella in his arms and felt a sense of contentment. I asked this okay now. Her red lips moved silently. Her eyes curved into a smile. She smacked a kiss on him. This time, he didn't dodge. He lowered his head and his lips seemed to meet hers halfway. As soon as the elevator door opened, the man couldn't hold on to the slippery hand of Bella. She loved to have fun and tease him. She wasn't satisfied with the night at the nightclub, and she had deliberately teased him in the car, while unlocking the door at home. Her hand had already slipped into his shirt to stir things up. Once they entered the house, they let loose. The wedding photo display on the entrance hall was knocked over, and their suits were thrown on the floor. Clothes were strewn all over the place. Bella hung on him like a koala, kissing, biting, and nibbling. She left red lipstick marks all over his face and body. She even had her way with him right on the sofa. When it came to this kind of thing, Bella was a bit overconfident at first but then lost steam. The man took the lead and took care of everything. He carried her from the sofa to the bedroom, helped her take a bath, and then went back to bed to sleep. The next morning, when Bella was still sleeping soundly and sweetly, the man quietly walked out of the bedroom. First, he made coffee and a nutritious breakfast for the two of them. Then he cleaned up the mess from last night, stuffing all the clothes on the floor into the washing machine. When he took out his ID badge from the pocket, there was still a faint red lipstick mark on the photo. Holding the ID badge, the man gave Bella a long, tender good morning kiss. Then he left for work in a good mood. Colleagues in the cubicles gradually arrived at the company and greeted the man, saying, "Good morning." Assistant last name. He was wearing a black cashmere turtleneck sweater, with a beige long-style windbreaker over it. He had a wristwatch on his hand, looking gentle and refined. Assistant last name. "You look really handsome today." A new male intern sincerely complimented him. "And your clothes look so high-end. What brand are they?" "They're discounted items." The man replied seriously as he waited for coffee in the pantry. He tugged at his sleeves and the wristwatch to cover the faint tooth marks on his wrist bone. Then he casually put a fruit candy in his pocket. His tone was amiable. "I don't know the brand. My wife bought them. This man seemed like the kind who was suitable for family life and within reach. He could handle both social and domestic affairs well, was hard-working and reliable at work, and wouldn't become rich overnight but also wouldn't starve. It wasn't surprising that he was snapped up by his discerning mother-in-law at a young age and got married early. Bella and Noah met in an interesting way. Bella is the eldest child in her family. She has a bunch of half-siblings. When she returned to her home country after finishing her studies, she reached the age for marriage. However, she was always surrounded by all kinds of friends. Her family tried to set her up with several high-quality potential marriage partners. The one with the best conditions was a major upstream client of her family's business. A big shot they had to fawn over. The second-generation heir had just returned from abroad and was quite taken with Bella's looks and figure. Bella was pressured by her family to socialize with this heir several times. This second-generation heir had just taken over the family company and started with the title of vice president. His hair was as shiny as his leather shoes. He was ambitious, full of ideas, and had a bad temper. He often made a mess of things for those around him. At that time, Noah wasn't her husband yet. He was a down-to-earth young clerk, working in the second-generation heir's company. He directly reported his project work to the heir. Bella visited their company and had tea and chatted with the heir in the office. Noah was in and out of the office, busy submitting reports and making presentations. While the pretty secretaries outside were sipping coffee and chatting on the phone, she propped her chin and pretended to be admiring as she watched the heir arrogantly take the documents and loudly question the data and plans. The young man at the desk, though, nodded and bowed, humble yet not servile. No matter how tricky the questions were, he could explain clearly with a stable emotion and in an organized manner, fighting for himself and the project team. That he seemed to be able to endure a lot. When Bella left, she passed by the pantry. She saw this man facing the floor-to-ceiling window, leaning on the table with one hand, frowning, and gulping down a cup of coffee in one go. Then he let out a soft sigh and turned around, his face calm again. She was always smiling, and she thought this man looked very pleasing. The scene in the office just now was a bit interesting, almost funny. She looked at him with a bit of amusement. Just then, their eyes met. Noah saw her vivid and beautiful smiling face. His steps faltered, and his eyes flickered, looking a bit embarrassed as if he had been caught doing something wrong. The cake I ate just now was a bit too sweet. I wanted to drink some water, Bella said, trying to hide her smile. I just happened to see this pantry. I'll pour you a glass, he said, lowering his head and not looking at her. His ears were secretly turning red, and his voice was clear and pleasant. Would you like warm water, tea, or juice? Warm water is fine. Bella shrugged when he handed the glass of water to her. She had just gotten a manicure. Her long, bejeweled nails were very eye-catching as she took the cup. His hand retracted like it had been shocked by an electric current. He nodded at her and walked away, trying to act calm. Hey, your document, she teased with a smile. The vice president just instructed that the 7th version project proposal needs to be submitted before the meeting in 2 hours. Sorry, I almost forgot, he said, turning back. He grabbed the folder and almost fled, his ears already red. After that, Bella had some more contact with this man, because he was single and easy to reach. And he worked a lot of overtime. The second-generation heir liked to assign him tasks. Sometimes he would also accompany the heir to business dinners, and after seeing the heir off to a date with Bella, he would go home and continue working overtime. During a break when the heir was on the phone, Bella casually glanced at him, looking at his pale face from drinking and his moist lips. She asked, "Still working overtime? Aren't you tired? Aren't you afraid of burning out?" "I'm not tired," he said, turning his face away. For some reason, he felt extremely awkward in front of her. There's just a little bit of work left to finish. Bella always carried a pack of hangover pills in her bag. She took out the whole box and threw it to him. "Here, take it." He took the hangover pills. In the box, there were not only hangover pills but also a few fruit candies. Bella had hypoglycemia and always liked to suck on a candy when she felt uncomfortable. Later, he found an opportunity to return it to her. A new box of hangover pills and a whole pack of fruit candies. He didn't want to hand it to her openly in the company, so he stood downstairs and said it was something the heir gave her. When he handed it to her, He pursed his lips and politely thanked her and the vice president for their concern. It was as if he was thanking the vice president's wife and the vice president. Bella found it hilarious to see his respectful and overly cautious attempt to maintain a proper workplace relationship. She took the things, waved at him, and left. Bella and the second-generation heir didn't click. She was just going through the motions with him because of family pressure. After they had a fight and cooled off for a while, Bella went on a trip abroad. When she came back, Noah was no longer in the heir's company. It was said that he had changed jobs. After he left, the projects the heir was in charge of were in chaos. The heir boasted that he would dig him back with a promotion and a raise and let him continue his previous work. At that time, Bella finally had enough. She had a huge fight with her family, cut off contact with the second-generation heir, and also distanced herself from her parents. She moved out and decided to support herself, unexpectedly. She met Noah again. Noah had switched to a larger company, got a promotion, and probably a raise too. Bella could tell from his more professional and capable demeanor. At that time, she had joined a luxury brand as a PR. They happened to meet on a cooperative project. He seemed a bit surprised that she didn't become the vice president's wife, but he didn't show it much. Of course, they didn't have much of a relationship. He just treated her as a professional partner, being polite and professional in emails, phone calls, and meetings. He was truly an excellent employee who didn't cause any trouble. At a cocktail party, he didn't drink alcohol. He tried to discreetly avoid the wine glasses and focused more on business talk rather than small talk. But Bella was different. She was in her element in such a lively and social occasion. She drank and socialized with ease, was beautiful and outgoing, made many friends, and also did an excellent job at work. There were also some lecherous middle-aged men who eyed Bella's slender collarbone and curvy figure, taking advantage of their status as business partners. They asked her to have a drink with them. Bella had already had quite a bit to drink but was still sober. She had a fiery temper and could even flip a table in public. She gave a sideways glance and picked up her glass to go over. Noah stepped in front of her, took the glass from her hand, and greeted the men with a big smile. When the cocktail party ended, Bella was about to leave. He was worried that the business partners might give her a hard time, so he accompanied her outside, seeing the blush on her face. He hailed a taxi to take her home. They both sat in the back seat. The smell of alcohol lingered in the air. Bella rolled down the window, squinted her tipsy eyes, propped her cheek with her hand, and chewed on a candy while staring blankly out of the window. The night wind blew her long hair, which was like soft willow branches or swaying seaweed in the water, fluttering gently as if within reach. He didn't talk much during the ride. He didn't know what to say. He just leaned quietly against the other door, his eyes secretly glancing at the window. The scenery outside was passing by, but on the closed window glass, there was a reflection. He could see her lazy profile and her hair fluttering in the wind. Even though he was looking in the opposite direction, Noah stared at her absent-mindedly. Suddenly, the taxi made a sharp turn. Bella was thrown to the inside by the inertia. He quickly reached out to support her. She half fell, half leaned into his arms. They were closer than ever before. She smelled sweet and was soft. Her big, bright eyes stared straight at him. Just one look made his ears feel hot. Noah nervously pursed his lips and didn't dare to move. His mind was in a muddle as he tried to think of something to say. Bella looked at his expression. His gentle and clean face showed a bit of embarrassment, and his dark eyes looked a bit like a dazed puppy's. Blankly not knowing what to think, her playfulness surged. She raised her eyebrows in his arms, blinked her long eyelashes, pouted her red lips, and playfully blew a breath at him. It was a sweet and fresh fruity smell. Bella held the fruit candy in her mouth and smiled brightly at him. Noah's mind went blank before he could react. His eyes were filled with her face. The hand supporting her started to tremble. His Adam's apple bobbed heavily, and then his cheeks turned red. He slowly turned his head away. Bella wasn't the least bit shy or considerate. She kept looking at his face, moved closer, and right in front of his eyes. She slowly and gently pouted her red lips again. Noah's Adam's apple bobbed again. His face turned bright red in an instant, and he quickly shrank back, almost jumping up in shock. Bella giggled. She thought this man was really interesting after the taxi incident. Bella noticed that Noah was avoiding her. It wasn't very obvious. His tone on the phone seemed a bit evasive, and his email replies were overly polite. When the two companies sat down to discuss business, he clearly saw Bella but deliberately turned his head as if nothing had happened. He chose the seat farthest from Bella in the meeting room that he presided over the meeting in a proper manner. But his eyes completely avoided Bella's direction. Bella casually held her coffee cup and watched him with great interest. She was surprised to find that his eyelashes were pitch black and long, giving him a somewhat feminine elegance. Her eyes sparkled, and her smile was a mix of charm, laziness, straightforwardness, and a hint of mischief. Noah didn't dare to look at her. One more look and he would feel a strange flutter in his heart, and his heart would start to race. Bella threw a few questions at Noah and stared at him intently, waiting for his answers. The fluorescent lights above their heads were not as intense as her gaze. Noah forced himself to face her gaze and talked to her politely, but his eyes were glued to the documents without looking up. The meeting ended just in time for lunch. They had a working lunch at the company cafeteria. Noah naturally accompanied the guests. When they sat together, they realized that they were dressed in similar work-appropriate colors. Noah was wearing a neatly pressed white shirt and black suit pants, and Bella, rarely, was wearing a proper white shirt and a black pencil skirt. They looked good together. They sat face to face at the long, narrow cafeteria table. During the conversation, their legs accidentally bumped under the table. Bella was chatting and smiling, while Noah pursed his lips, quickly and quietly withdrew his leg, and then stood up and moved his chair away as if to avoid suspicion that he went to the dessert counter and brought back some after-lunch desserts. He politely handed them to the female colleagues present, and the most attractive strawberry tart was inadvertently placed in front of Bella. It was her favorite. She used to eat such desserts often in the office of the rich second-generation heir, after the working lunch. Noah saw Bella and her colleagues off. Finally, she came over to shake hands with him. A breeze blew, and her hair was tousled, the fine strands brushing across her eyes. Bella tilted her head slightly, smiled brightly, and reached out her hand, saying, "It's been a pleasure working with you. See you next time." Noah's eyes flickered. He lowered his eyes and said softly, "See you next time." He shook her hand politely but briefly, and before the warmth of their hands could be fully felt, he let go. He put his arm behind his back and opened the car door for her. He was polite and proper, but also a bit awkward and embarrassed. This story had a follow-up later. The intern assistant found a notebook while cleaning the meeting room and gave it to Noah. Noah flipped through it casually. The notebook was thick and had no name on it. When he opened the first page, there were colorful sticky notes, various hand-drawn creative ideas, and some meeting records. It had a very flamboyant style. There was no doubt that this belonged to Bella. Noah thought for a long time. Finally, he called Bella. She let out an ah on the phone, and her voice was extremely clear and pleasant. She said the thing was indeed hers and very important, but she was too busy with work these days to pick it up. She asked if he could find someone to send it to her. In fact, this matter could be easily solved. Worst case scenario, there were services like same-day delivery or company interns who could do it. But Noah didn't think of that at the time. He thought it was on his way, so he could just return it to her after work. They agreed to meet downstairs at Bella's company. She was also busy with overtime work those days. Her hair was tied up with a long pen. She was holding a file folder in one hand and a coffee cup in the other. When she saw Noah from afar, she smiled. Her high-heeled shoes were very pointed, and she walked with a confident gait, showing the air of a modern urban beauty. Noah handed the notebook to her. Bella directly stuffed the coffee cup into his hand, flipped through the notebook twice, found a sticky note with a phone number on it, and beamed. "Thank goodness. I finally found it." Just like that, Bella dragged Noah to have a meal. They went to a small izakaya in an alley near the company. They walked in one after the other and pushed open an unremarkable small door. Bella was familiar with this place and chose her usual seat. The lights were warm and yellow, creating a relaxing atmosphere. The menu in the store was handwritten. She took the pen out of her hair and wrote beautifully under the light. At this moment, Noah had no say in what to eat or drink. She was in charge. They ate salt-roasted ginkgo nuts and drank beer. Bella complained about the lousy things at work while eating. Once the topic was opened, the two office workers naturally started talking about work. Who would have thought that the two people who were so different back in the rich second generation's office would one day sit in a narrow little tavern sharing their work experiences? Bella was even more surprised to find that Noah, who seemed like a reserved and advanced office worker, knew a lot of secrets. She tried hard to get some juicy gossip out of him. Noah tried his best to maintain his professional ethics and didn't say anything he shouldn't. He kept raising his glass under Bella's persistent questioning. They didn't leave until late at night. To digest the food, they took a long walk along the river. Noah picked up a stone and taught her how to skip it on the water. They also talked about the rich second generation. Bella said proudly that she wouldn't cling to a wealthy man just as her family wanted. She claimed that she was the one who got to be picky about men. Noah also said that he didn't go back to his former boss's company even though he was offered a high-paying job. He had his own career plan. As usual, he sent her home. Bella fell asleep in the taxi, wrapped in his suit jacket. Then came Valentine's Day. A brand client gave Bella a box of new product chocolates. Bella took the opportunity to share them with her colleagues and friends during the festival. She also sent a few boxes to the project contacts in Noah's company. Noah noticed that his box of chocolates was obviously different from the others. It was more delicate and expensive. As if. He thought, and finally asked her vaguely if she had sent the wrong one. Bella said, "No, I didn't. My box." There were pink heart-shaped chocolates in the box, and an eternal rose and a Valentine's Day greeting card. "Yeah, that's right. This box is for you. A special one. Isn't it a bit too expensive?" Bella was sitting at her desk, holding the phone between her shoulder and ear, typing on the keyboard. Her tone was very natural. "Come on, can't you tell what this means?" Since she broke up with the rich second generation, she had been single. Although she was busy with work, she still wanted to have a relationship, and she just happened to meet someone she felt okay about. Noah's face froze instantly, and he gasped on the phone. Although work was work, everyone occasionally talked about relationship gossip. At that time, Noah was working under a tough and strict boss. His work ability was solid. Although he was good-looking, no one had any romantic thoughts about him because work was more important than love. And his work principle was not to mix work and personal life. Noah swallowed hard and stammered on the phone. "This might not be appropriate. We. The boss is calling for a meeting. I'll hang up first. We'll talk later." Bella hung up the phone, jumped up from her chair, and rushed to the meeting room with the documents in her arms. As she left, she wrinkled her nose and hummed softly, pursed her lips, revealing a hint of her sharp teeth. How dare he reject her, after this phone call? The matter of the chocolates suddenly stopped. Bella went on a business trip abroad with her boss for more than half a month. Then Noah was busy with company changes and project adjustments. It was more than a month before they saw each other again. They met at a business dinner. Noah's expression when he saw her was a bit dazed and nervous. Bella was holding a glass of champagne, socializing with everyone with a fake smile. It was a Friday night, and the atmosphere was relaxed and intoxicating. After seeing off the guests at the dinner, Bella planned to go somewhere else for a second party. She privately invited her friends to a nightclub. Noah watched her walk into the restroom and come out. She changed from a professional woman into her usual self. Her decent little dress was replaced with a strappy miniskirt. Her eyes sparkled. Her makeup was glamorous, and her long hair was flying. Bella stuffed all her things into her handbag. Seeing Noah standing aside, looking hesitant and embarrassed, she raised her eyebrows and asked him if he wanted to go clubbing with them. Noah shook his head. He wasn't interested in such places. He would rather go home and take a bath and go to bed. "Hey," Bella said, crossing her arms proudly. "It's a great weekend. You're not just going home to take a bath and go to bed, are you?" Noah had rolled up the sleeves of his white shirt to his elbows. Standing under the neon lights, he had a clear and refined air. He shifted his weight a bit, feeling embarrassed to admit it. He pursed his lips and said, "Not exactly. I also watch movies." "What movies?" Bella tilted her head and asked, her eyes sharp. "Don't you like dating?" Her eyes scanned him up and down, with a half smile. "Do you have high standards or have you had a broken heart? With your lifestyle, do you even have time for a relationship?" Noah couldn't stand her gaze. He looked away, his expression a bit awkward. He stammered and couldn't say anything. "It's not like that. Bella directly threw her handbag into his arms that night. Noah followed Bella into the nightclub in a daze that he had been to such places occasionally, accompanying his boss or clients to talk about some ambiguous topics. No one really paid attention to the dance floor or the music. But this time, it was for pure fun and relaxation. Besides, it was hard to talk in this place. You had to shout at the top of your lungs to be heard. Noah was dragged into the dance floor by Bella. She was like a slippery fish, swaying in the crowd. Noah saw that men around were constantly reaching out to invite her to dance. He pushed them away and followed her closely. Like a penguin, Bella was having a great time. She turned around, saw him behind her, stood on tiptoe to signal that she wanted to talk to him. He lowered his head to get closer to her, but Bella just smiled and ruffled his hair, shouting in his ear, "Don't get lost. Follow me obediently." Little brother, the atmosphere on the dance floor was getting hotter. Noah looked at her beaming face and really wanted to ruffle her hair too. At this moment, the electronic music suddenly boomed, and the dance floor was like a surging wave, swaying everyone. They were pushed towards the middle by the crowd around them. He frowned, opened his arms to create a little space. Bella jumped into his arms with a smile, leaned against him, and naturally put her arm around his. She started dancing with him. Her eyes were so bright. Her body was slender, fragrant, soft, and smooth. She was light, and her arms were thin. Her voluminous wavy hair made his whole body tingle, and he almost stopped breathing. The colorful laser lights couldn't hide Noah's blushing face and burning ears. Later, when they left the nightclub, Noah sent Bella home. He wasn't exactly nervous, but he was absent-minded. Only Bella seemed unaffected. She tossed her hair, yawned, and walked away, waving at him. "Let's make another appointment next time." Noah couldn't sleep all night. He started thinking from the day he met Bella in the rich second generation's office, all the way to the way her eyes sparkled on the dance floor. In the end, he was still confused and buried his head in the pillow. Their relationship seemed a bit ambiguous. Bella was talking to him about the project progress on a conference call with many people listening in. They were polite and businesslike. At the end of the conversation, before logging off, Bella casually asked, "Hey, are you working overtime tonight? Do you want to go to the movies together?" Noah's heart skipped a beat, and his fingers started shaking. He almost jumped up from his office chair. While being flustered, he also paid attention to the group of colleagues. Thankfully, all the others had logged off. Bella had a piece of wedding candy from a colleague in the next-door group in her mouth. "So, are you going?" Noah's heart was in his throat. He quickly tried to end the conference call group, lowered his voice, and replied vaguely and quickly, "Sure, sure, sure." Noah almost arrived late. When he finally rushed to the cinema, out of breath and in a mess, Bella pointed to the front desk and asked him to buy popcorn and Coke. Then she pushed Noah, who had a lot to say, into the screening hall. They were watching a suspense movie in a VIP couple's seat. Bella propped her cheek with her hand and watched the movie. Noah was holding the popcorn bucket. She picked up the popcorn one by one and stared at the screen absent-mindedly. The movie was really bad. Bella was bored, and Noah's mind was even less on the movie. He would stare straight at the screen for a while, then hand the Coke to Bella, and then secretly glance at Bella's face. "What are you looking at?" Her eyes reflected the movie screen. She propped her chin with her hand and gave him a casual glance that it seemed that this man had a lot to say to her. We're both really busy with work right now. To be honest, I've never really thought about." Bella turned her head and stared at him quietly. He lowered his eyelids, his black eyelashes fluttering. Then he looked up again, looking straight into her beautiful eyes. After thinking for a while, he said calmly, "Between you and me, it seems like, were they not really suitable? Because of work, personality, time, familiarity, experiences, family." Bella raised her eyebrows, tilted her chin, and reached out to grab his collar, pulling him closer to her. Her delicate face moved closer, only a tiny distance away from his. Her eyebrows and eyes were clear and beautiful. He didn't notice the new earring she bought downstairs or her newly touched-up date makeup. She pouted her red lips slightly, with a hint of annoyance and pride, with an "how dare you reject me" attitude. She pressed her lips against Noah's hesitant lips. Her lips were moist and glamorous, And his were gentle and surprised. It was a soft and warm velvet-like touch, mixed with the rich sweetness of the popcorn. Something seemed to explode in the air, forcing them to close their eyes stiffly and quietly. Falling into an endless abyss, Bella pulled back a little, leaving a small gap between their lips. Say that again. Noah opened his confused and dazed eyes. There was a long moment of blankness, like his heart had been suddenly grabbed. He stared at her blankly. He couldn't say a word. Are you rejecting me? Her sweet breath gently fell on his lips. You jerk. I'm the one chasing you. Okay. He swallowed hard, licked his dry and numb lips, and stared straight at her. Or rather, at her lips. He had never experienced such a thrilling moment in his life or work. In the movie, there were screams everywhere, and the noise was deafening. Bella looked at him with clear eyes, and her cold nose gently rubbed against his. She exhaled softly and sweetly. If you agree, we can kiss during this boring movie. She mentioned kissing, and he had a pair of lips that seemed perfect for it. Noah's mind was blank, with no trace of the movie scene. There was only her vivid face and beautiful lips. He felt a rush of adrenaline, and his body reacted before his mind. He gently licked his lips again, closed his eyes, and slightly leaned his lips towards hers. Bella's lips curved into a smile. The hand that had been tugging at his collar moved to his shoulder, and she sweetly met his kiss. Noah realized belatedly that he had a girlfriend. In terms of personality, they were completely different, and their outlooks on life were also poles apart. Regarding marriage and love, Bella had almost become his former boss's wife. The company didn't encourage office romances, especially with employees from partner companies. Noah thought he was probably driven by desire, but since he had agreed, he had no intention of going back on his word. He also didn't want to mix work with personal matters. So, with a blushing face and a pounding heart, he started a secret relationship with Bella. Bella's life was like a dazzling world store. She would show up at work fashionably on time, and after work, she would be full of energy and go out to have fun. Her phone was constantly ringing with various social engagements. Noah, on the other hand, was as regular as a train that departs on time. His life was simple, with a regular routine. He had a few healthy hobbies, several like-minded friends, and a job he took seriously. Love wasn't the whole of life for them. It was more like a flavor that spiced up their lives, but with a touch of the working-class flavor. Bella would freely haggle over work plans with him, whether it was in the morning when she woke up or at night before going to bed. She would always sweetly call his name on the phone and propose some demanding terms. When they went on a date and had dinner, Bella would turn around and pay with a corporate invoice, claiming it was for entertaining clients. Noah would frown, looking at the dining invoice in his hand, feeling embarrassed. She would confidently ask if they had talked about work during the meal, then put the invoice in her bag without a care and even submit an overtime application on her phone, not to mention when the intern assistant handed Noah a newly delivered document, and 2 tickets to a weekend amusement park fell out of the envelope. He secretly hid them. When they went to the haunted house, she would scream and bury her head in his arms, pinching his arm until it turned blue. She really was the type who loved to play despite being bad at it. Every morning, when Bella rushed into the office, there would always be coffee and breakfast waiting for her on the table. Bella and her colleagues entered Noah's company again. This time, the meeting had wonderful refreshments and gifts. Everyone complimented the good treatment, and the host laughed and said that since there was a surplus in the quarterly budget, they decided to add more benefits. Bella took a bite of the maple syrup strawberry tart and glanced over. She hadn't seen Noah for a week because of a business trip. He stood among the leaders like a tender young cabbage, tall, thin, and fair-skinned. Among those shrewd and crafty bosses, he still managed to look young, promising, and charming, but he didn't even look at her during the break. Bella used the excuse of using the printer to corner Noah in the company's print room. Didn't you see me? It seems I'm not very memorable. She raised her face and got right in front of his eyes. Her clear eyes under long eyelashes glanced sideways, and she had a faint, charming smile. Her expression was vivid as she slowly pushed Noah, who was looking around warily, into a corner. It's not like that. He had seen her walk in from downstairs. She put her hands on her hips. Did you miss me when I was on the business trip? Noah's eyes darted around, looking nervous and guilty. Yes. The sound of phone rings and conversations drifted in from outside the print room. At any moment, someone might pass by and catch this pair of seemingly unrelated people in a strange position. It was like the atmosphere of cheating on an exam. Bella, however, loved being the naughty student. She reached out and grabbed his tie, and her red lips moved closer. Someone's coming. Noah's heart skipped a beat. He stepped back and, in a flurry, waved away Bella's hand. His movement was a bit too forceful by accident. Bella's hand missed its mark, and her hand was hit. She pouted unhappily. She raised her eyes, tilted her head, and stared at him coldly and intently. There's someone coming here, Noah said with difficulty, tugging at his tie. His eyes flicked to the corridor outside and then back to Bella's face. His cheeks were slightly red, and he said with even more difficulty as he opened the lock of the side door, "There's a fire escape here. It's more convenient to talk." They didn't say anything, without a word. Bella kissed him. They kissed in the dim and narrow staircase. His lips were warm and soft, and his posture was a bit shy and resistant. He let Bella's sweet lips move on his. His body was tense, and his hands gently held her shoulders. He held his breath and said softly, "That's enough, right?" As a good student who had never done anything out of line since childhood, he couldn't take this kind of excitement. Of course, Bella wouldn't let him have his way. She pinched his waist and bit his lips with her sharp teeth. Noah let out a muffled groan and hugged her, gasping, "Don't." If they were seen by colleagues, it would be hard to explain, Bella asked. "So what if we're seen?" Noah's face turned red and hot. "It would be humiliating and scandalous." In the dim light, Bella saw that his eyes were dark and moist, with a hint of pitiful nervousness. She was delighted and let go of him triumphantly, laughing. "Okay, the meeting's about to start. You go out first." During the second half of the meeting, Noah didn't notice that he was touching his lips frequently, which caught people's attention. Strangely, his lips seemed a bit swollen. This kiss carried over into their dating time. They found time to watch a play. After having a candlelit dinner, he drove her home. The car stopped by the roadside for a good-night kiss. This time, there was no reason for Noah to dodge. They kissed smoothly and naturally. He held Bella's face. His eyelashes fluttered, and he closed his eyes gently to kiss her. As their lips and tongues intertwined, their breaths and heart rates rose. Even when Bella was out of breath and pulled back, he actively leaned forward, put his arm around her shoulder, and chased her lips for more kisses until Bella laughed. Only then did he suddenly realize his own initiative. "What are you laughing at?" He pursed his lips, trying to look serious with his handsome face. "Shall I take you home?" "Wait a bit," Bella said, her red lips meeting his. Her voice was soft and seductive. It felt good just now. A bit more, and the feeling of love was really nice. In these deep and shallow kisses, Bella opened his shirt. His lean body felt good to the touch. He had a few thin but firm abs, and there was not a trace of fat around his waist. She whispered, asking how a corporate slave like him had time to work out. Noah was so flustered that his pulse was all over the place. He said in a low voice that he got up at 6 every morning and had a long-standing habit of morning jogging. Bella mumbled and gave his abs another squeeze. She didn't like overly muscular men, nor did she like those with flabby bellies or skinny frames. A bit of strength was just right. Later, they planned a vacation during their annual leave. Bella chose a nearby tourist city and booked a nice hotel. It was a natural progression. After kissing passionately several times, they finally got intimate, to Bella's surprise. Although Noah looked gentle and suitable for family life, he wasn't very good in bed. No man in the world would admit to being bad at it. His face froze for a moment, and then he sat stubbornly at the end of the bed, resting his chin in his hand for a long time. Bella thought about saying something nice to comfort him. She leaned over from behind and kissed his sweaty forehead. Unexpectedly, he pushed her onto the bed, lifted the thin quilt, and she was met with his sullen and stubborn eyes. Before long, Bella was biting the corner of the quilt, silent. Then, in another position, with her hair sweaty, she bit his round and firm shoulder, grinding her teeth in frustration. Their relationship continued. They went to work, worked overtime, had secret dates whenever they could. When the year-end performance evaluations came out, Noah got a promotion and a raise, and his title became more prestigious. Bella's work was also progressing well, with a promising future. However, At the end of the year, Bella simply handed in her resignation letter and transferred her work to her colleagues. Noah learned about Bella's resignation from the staff changes in the cooperative project. She was excitedly planning an overseas trip. When Noah asked her, she said she was tired of working in a cubicle and wanted to start a business with her friends. She planned to open a bar, form a band, make investments, and do something different. This was typical of Bella. She was free-spirited and rebellious since childhood and didn't like to follow the rules. Noah, of course, supported her decision, but he couldn't help feeling a bit disappointed. Her trip was with a few friends as part of an influencer project, and they even had a photographer. She didn't include him in the plan. Knowing that he was busy at work and couldn't take a few months off for a vacation, Bella left with a whistle, telling him to work hard. They were separated by time zones and distance. Bella would send him a few photos and messages every few days. She lived in the moment and didn't like to chat about trivial things. Their communication wasn't very frequent. Noah would scroll through that influencer account every day. Sometimes he could see her in the pictures, smiling brightly, hooking her arm around her friend's shoulder, looking extremely cool. Occasionally, when Noah was free, he would buy a ticket to the cinema, watch a play alone, visit a haunted house, order a plate of salt-roasted ginkgo nuts with beer at an izakaya. He would lower his head, refreshing his phone, and then go back to work overtime to write a report or a new project proposal. He thought that the lively girl on the phone was like a brightly plumaged bird that had once stopped by. Who knew if she would come back? Bella returned from abroad, looking tired and dusty. But she didn't tell Noah she was back. Noah knew she was back. He called her several times but couldn't reach her, and she didn't come to find him either. One night, he attended a business dinner. For some reason, he was in a bad mood and drank a few glasses of wine. After the dinner, he went to the restroom to wash his face. Looking at himself in the mirror, he saw a man with red eyes and a strange expression. He stared at himself, then suddenly felt dejected. He threw away the contract in his hand and took a long annual leave for the first time. Leaving his work behind, he didn't go anywhere else but stayed at home, feeling listless. He would watch movies late at night, lost in thought, thinking about all sorts of things. Late at night, he suddenly received a call from Bella. Her voice was as lively and energetic as ever. She asked him angrily if he had a place for her to stay because she wanted to move in. Noah was like a person waking up from a heavy drunk. He straightened his back, holding a beer can, and stood barefoot on the cold floor. He asked her what was wrong. Bella rambled on about how she had been arguing with her family since she got back. Her parents thought she was disobedient and unproductive. They had scolded her several times and even took back the apartment she was living in, forcing her to go home and admit her mistakes. Noah looked around his house, scratched his head, and stammered that he had an extra room. Bella packed her things, tossed her hair, and moved into his place. Fuming, the night Bella moved in, she channeled her anger into passion. She left marks on Noah's neck, collarbone, and arms with her bites, and her nails left long scratches on his back. In the end, Noah had a satisfied but slightly comical look on his face as he held the sound asleep Bella in his arms. Feeling a sense of luck at having her back, the cohabitation life was more harmonious than they had imagined. The integration of their two different worlds was like an intermingling. The world store could be arranged in the punctual train, and the fixed set train could also have a special seat added for her. Noah continued to go to work as usual, being a dedicated office worker, working hard to climb the corporate ladder. Bella partnered with her friends to open a trendy concept store. Although her dream of forming a band didn't come true, she at least invested in a small rock band. She was busy with her business, with both profits and losses, but she had income and confidence, so she didn't want to go back and be controlled by her parents. Since then, Noah's life had been going smoothly. He was in high spirits, with a more friendly and approachable smile on his face and an even more dedicated work attitude. Besides wearing white shirts, he would occasionally wear a black turtleneck sweater. When his colleagues complimented his new business style, Noah would nod, his face blushing slightly at night. When Bella gently bit his Adam's apple, he would be excited and whisper for her not to leave a mark. It was a sweet little surprise. Later that month, Bella's store had a collaborative event. She was busy with it for months, running around and dealing with various things. After the event ended, while chatting with a friend at the store, the friend suddenly mentioned that her period was late. Bella was shocked and realized that she hadn't had hers either. The two exchanged a look and then went to the pharmacy to buy a pregnancy test kit. Not long after, Noah received a message from Bella. She sent him a photo of 2 pink test strips, one of which had 2 lines. She said, "We're playing a guessing game. Someone's pregnant. Guess who? There's a prize if you get it right." Noah's mind went blank for a moment. And then a flood of thoughts rushed in. He picked up his phone and was about to go to her. But then he turned back, opened the drawer, and took out a diamond ring from a chocolate box. When he rushed to the store in a hurry, Bella was sitting by the window, sipping coffee with her chin in her hand. She watched Noah enter, sweating profusely. He stood right in front of her, his chest heaving, his brows furrowed, and his lips moving but no words coming out. Just then, footsteps sounded from behind. Her friend, with red-rimmed eyes from crying, was holding a phone. She looked at Bella, then at Noah, and shouted into the phone, "You'd better get over here right now. You've got 10 minutes. If you're not here in 10 minutes, I'm going to the hospital and make sure you'll never be able to have kids." Bella shrugged, looked at Noah coolly, picked up her coffee cup, and smiled. Sorry. 10 minutes later, Bella and Noah had to deal with a chaotic scene of a new parents-to-be fight. They talked about everything from the start of their relationship to all the trivial arguments. And then it came to who would hold the financial power in the family and how irresponsible men should go to hell. They accompanied the arguing couple all the way to the obstetrics and gynecology department of the hospital, after finally calming the couple down and sending them in for the checkup. Bella and Noah stood in the corridor waiting for the results. There was an old window beside them, and under the window, a crabapple tree was in full bloom. People were coming and going under the tree, including white-haired elders, newborn babies, pregnant women, and young people. Noah looked at the crabapple tree downstairs, then at Bella beside him. The long, empty corridor was filled with the smell of disinfectant. He was still holding the ring in his hand. He had bought the ring when Bella was traveling abroad. One day, while passing by a store, he went in on a whim and bought it without hesitation, but he never had the chance to give it to her. So he just left it in the drawer. He let out a soft sigh. Bella blinked in surprise as she watched Noah nervously lick his lips. Finally, he knelt down on one knee in front of her, as if making a last-ditch effort, and held out the ring. Come on. Who would propose in a hospital corridor? Come on. She was Bella. There was no way she'd say yes. As expected, the proposal was rejected. Bella didn't want to get married young. She said she loved to have fun, that this wasn't a decision to be made on a whim, and went on about relationships. But then her voice trailed off. Noah didn't seem disappointed or dejected. He said okay naturally, as if choosing an item on a dinner menu. He put the ring back in his pocket and then asked if she wanted to leave and give the arguing couple some space. They strolled around the area and went to a baby store to pick out a gift for the pregnant friend. After Bella chose the gift, she turned around and saw Noah standing among a bunch of pink and blue baby products, idly playing with a cute little wind chime. She walked up to him and asked with a smile, "I didn't know you liked kids so much." "Not really. I don't have any strong feelings about it," he replied. After all, they were still young. Their work and lives had nothing to do with having kids yet, and they hadn't thought too much about the future. After paying, they left. Noah was carrying the shopping bag in one hand and holding Bella's hand in the other. She pinched his nice-looking fingers and suddenly asked, "When you thought I was pregnant, what was your first reaction?" Noah said truthfully, "It was a terrible feeling, It really shouldn't have happened. I thought you might beat me up because it's not a good thing for you." He rubbed the tip of his nose. "But I'll definitely take responsibility for everything." Bella had never been one to be tied down. She laughed heartily, the kind of carefree laugh that came from the bottom of her heart. She was used to going out drinking and clubbing in high heels, shining brightly and doing whatever she wanted. She was like a brightly plumaged bird. How could she be burdened? "I might really beat you up," Bella mumbled, but the corners of her red lips curled up slightly. When they got home, Bella started chatting on the phone with her close friends, discussing plans for a surprise party. Noah finished dealing with some office matters on the phone and then started washing his hands to make dinner. She was lounging on the sofa, munching on potato chips, as she chatted on the phone. Her eyes casually glanced at Noah in the kitchen. The man had taken off his suit and changed into home clothes that he was wearing loose. comfortable long-sleeved cotton linen clothes that fit him well. They were a simple and refreshing color, making him blend naturally into the home environment. He looked less sharp and more relaxed compared to when he was in a shirt and suit. The kitchen was neat and tidy. He cooked at a steady pace and could make several delicious signature dishes. He was really good at everything. Bella quietly sneaked up behind him and suddenly hugged his waist. "What's for dinner tonight? Are you hungry? There'll be 2 dishes and a soup. I'm using the ingredients left in the fridge. It'll be ready soon." She clung to his back and slipped her hand inside his clothes, feeling his abs and narrow waist. After a while, she asked, "Hey, when did you buy that diamond ring?" His tone was casual. "When you were traveling abroad." Her eyes widened in surprise, and she asked with a smile, "Why didn't you tell me? How many carats is it? How much did it cost? Where did you buy it?" Noah told her, and Bella immediately understood. "Was it your year-end bonus? That's a lot of money that I didn't have any other big expenses at the time that I wasn't even here. Why did you suddenly buy a ring? Were you that eager to propose?" "I worked overtime late that day. When I passed by that store, I just went in." Noah paused for a moment. "Actually, it wasn't really for proposing. It was just a thought." "What kind of thought?" "I missed you so much at that time. I wanted to rush to you on impulse. But I was afraid you wouldn't like it. I was also afraid you wouldn't come back. Or that you'd come back with another man. But no matter what, I had this thought that no matter where you were, I'd be here. This person, this home, and this ring. They were all yours." She laughed. "You know I'm not impressed by this. I can come up with such sweet talk any time that I know." Noah nodded. "I just wanted you to know that no matter how far she flew, she always had a home to return to." Bella let out a sigh for no apparent reason and buried her face in his back, breathing in his clean and pleasant scent. She closed her eyes and said, "Although I didn't accept your proposal, who would propose in a hospital anyway? It's so unlucky. But I can give you another task. I'll take you to meet my parents sometime. You can help me deal with their scolding." Noah's eyes lit up like a puppy's. She bit his shoulder playfully. "I won't help you. It's up to you." After that, there was a really chaotic period. Bella's parents had built their company from scratch. When they divorced, they each took half of the clients. Over the years, they had been competing and fighting with her biological and step-parents. It was a complete mess. When Noah first visited as Bella's boyfriend, he was given a cold reception and had a tough time. Noah took all the blame from both sides for Bella. He visited regularly, enduring the cold treatment with a humble attitude, admitting his faults and being persistent. The family believed that he had somehow bewitched Bella into breaking up with the rich second-generation heir and making her act so rebelliously. From then on, Bella had an easier time. No one cared about her talking back or rebellious behavior anymore because it was all Noah's fault during a holiday. Bella went to Noah's house for dinner. Noah's parents lived in an old neighborhood of a government-affiliated complex, in a house on the first floor with a yard. When they arrived, Noah opened the door and heard his parents arguing. One was complaining about someone ruining their fish, and the other was saying, "What's the big deal? Are you going to hang it up as a specimen?" When they turned around and saw Noah with a beautiful girl at the door, they were flustered and told them to wait outside for a while they tidied up. No one expected them to come a day early. Bella turned her head and saw a row of cats neatly lined up under the yard fence. There were black, white, orange, and tortoiseshell cats, all looking up at the red fish bucket, waiting to be fed. When the door opened again, Noah's parents, dressed brightly and flamboyantly, opened the door with big smiles and warmly welcomed Bella into the house. Bella then understood how Noah's personality had formed. His parents had been ordinary clerks in the unit all their lives, honest and down to earth. After retirement, they didn't have any big hobbies. Noah's father went fishing early and late, and Noah's mother liked to watch TV and feed the stray cats in the yard. Their son was introverted, had excellent grades since childhood, was obedient, and followed the rules. She took the big red envelope given by Noah's parents, sat in the small yard, and fed the cats. She was quite satisfied with the meal. When it was Noah's turn to visit Bella's parents' house, the treatment was completely different. During the spring festival, Bella was upstairs with her grandparents, sipping bird's nest soup, her lips turning a rosy color. Noah was left alone downstairs, sitting on a cold bench, Sipping a cup of tea meant for sending off guests, Bella suggested that they all play mahjong. It was only when they were short of one player that Noah had a chance to go upstairs. The mahjong game lasted until the early hours of the morning. There was no way they could send him away at that time. Bella's family prepared a guest room for Noah, which was far from Bella's bedroom. He stayed there politely, but then Bella quietly slipped into his room and nestled into his arms like a mermaid. Noah couldn't resist her charm. They spent half the night fooling around. By the time they fell asleep, it was already dawn. The next day, it was the day when the family was hosting guests. The living room was filled with relatives, chatting and munching on sunflower seeds. Everyone was stunned when they saw Bella walking out of the room. Arm in arm with Noah, she looked glamorous, with a face that showed both sleepiness from the night before and the joy of the new year. She casually tossed her hair in front of the surprised eyes of her relatives. Everyone stared at the huge diamond ring on her ring finger. Noah stood there, stunned, staring at her in disbelief. She had never even looked at the ring properly, nor asked him where he put it. When did she put it on? Bella waved her hand, smiling charmingly and playfully. Coincidentally, everyone is here today. I'm back to discuss the wedding date with my parents. They said they'll pick a good day, and I'm just letting everyone know to come to my wedding. The room was in an uproar. After that, it was a headache for Noah. Both sets of in-laws were fighting over who would sit at the main table at the wedding. What was he going to do?